volume was off, and I only realized after a minute and a half, so I just scrapped it, doing it again. So hello everyone. It is Monday the 2nd of June, 2025, and I just got back from some chores and a good workout with a friend. And because I'm going to be leaving kind of mid to end month for about a week or so, I want to front end videos so that I'm not doing like 10-hour videos like when I get back. And this is a good one as well that I want to share. And before I get into that, actually, I was going to talk about Marco Rubio and an announcement that he had just made recently that I didn't get to talk about in my earlier video. So Marco Rubio announced that officials from any country complicit in censoring free speech are now banned from entering the United States. And so Canada is obviously complicit in censoring free speech, multiple other countries as well. And if they want the names of the officials that have been involved in censoring of the free speech, they can just go to our House of Commons. Our 105 members, make it where they're banned from entering the U.S. I think that would be hilarious and warranted. I think a lot of these people should be in jail too. And so that would be minor compared to like what I think that they should be held accountable for, right? Obviously peaceful. But even the legal systems, like I talked about this morning, there are people that have been selected for various very important positions within the legal system, highest levels of government, and so there's no accountability when they're all working together, right? And legal teams and lawyers out of Toronto and Vancouver, like I was saying, and judges anointed by these people, and again, just pushing such a bias, two-tiered justice system that is absolutely disgusting. That these people are still getting away with it and not getting their licenses revoked and fired and again jailed. Like judges in jail, like this should be a thing. This should be a thing. And lawyers. Yeah, they're going after like veterans, etc. as well, saying that we're number one on the domestic terrorist list. It's absolutely disgusting when these are the actual fucking fudging terrorists. We're just trying to share the truth. I'm talking about so many people. Anyway. Okay, so onto the video because I think it's very important. I didn't obviously tag the whole thing, but this is the full title. Canada, Australia, USA, European Commission, Israel speak at 2016, the Rockefeller University coordinating global brain projects, US Brain Initiative, and 3 technologies. Quite a lot there. And we'll play from the beginning. And this is like almost 10 years ago now. This has been pushed, and Canada is like very involved in the biodigital convergence, the AI technologies, like the cybersecurity. But again, like if they were actually doing things in a good way, it'd be fine. But they're not, and so it's not fine. If that makes any sense. And these brain chips and technologies, I do believe that, it's going to be disconnecting people from our spirits or souls, whatever you want to call it. And that our claustrum, which I believe to be the brain's supercomputer, again, if that's disconnected or being impacted by these brain chip technologies, like you're really not going to be ever able to access your higher levels of consciousness and your intuition and your intelligence and things like that. Like I think it's going to do the absolute opposite of what people think. And not only that, but whatever would be embedded in these chips, like that would be the truth to the people that do opt for that. And like I've repeatedly shown, and many other people, not just me, not even close, there's been a lot of misinformation and pseudoscience and propaganda and psychological operations that have been ongoing, and they have been within the education systems at all level, and political systems, and the agencies that work in and around them, like the Rockefeller Foundation, like I've Bill Gates Foundation, the Open Society Foundation under George Soros, Ford, etc. And like I said, Canada is one of the on the forefront of these technologies, and even with WEF, regarding WEF and this push. Very prominent positions have been held and are held by Canadians. Even though we're about the same population size as California. Yeah. So Canada and California actually have almost exactly the same population. The last stats I checked, it's almost 40 million for either or, right? So anyways, on with the show.
I'm here representing the Minister of Health for Canada, Jane Philpott, who sends her best regards. I'm also scientific director of one of the institutes at CIHR, which is the Canadian Institute for Health Research, the one that deals with neurosciences, mental health, and addiction. And while I haven't included this in my presentation, this organization funds around 20% of all health research in Canada, and the budget is approximately $200 million a year. Despite all of these expenditures, we were really impressed by the initiatives undertaken by our American and European colleagues, where they're attempting to, and succeeding actually, in integrating the neuroscience research in their different communities. And so we wanted to emulate that. This slide is meant to portray two things. We do want to bring a new perspective to understanding the brain, but it's also meant to convey to you that Canada is cool. Thank you. Does that advance it? Yeah, anyway, thanks. So the goal of our institute, and also the goal of this new initiative that we're trying to coordinate, is first of all the generation of knowledge. The point's been made many times this morning about how we have to build on a sound basis of understanding of brain function and structure before we can understand and treat the various disorders that arise from brain dysfunction. But nevertheless, we do want to state publicly that when it's appropriate, we really want to emphasize the translation of this knowledge to the improvement of human health. So in order to design a plan, we adopted a bottom-up strategy where I invited all of the leaders of the major neuroscience institutes in Canada, of which there are many, fortunately. And we've met twice so far, once in Montreal and more recently this year in Vancouver. And throughout these deliberations, we came up with a number of principles that we felt could create a national brain plan for Canada that would also complement what was happening internationally. And here I really want to emphasize this point. It's like a soft diplomacy sort of approach. Canada has been very successful over the last 20 to 25 years in building really effective research collaboration. And it's done it particularly well in the brain research area. And so many speakers this morning have emphasized the need to build these teams and the management of teams and the creation of collaboration is absolutely essential. Well, we've been there and we've done that. And we want to make sure that we have this resource at the service of our national brain research activities. Other points that have been touched on, whatever we do, we want to make sure that it's done to the highest ethical standards. And also at CIHR and as at NIH, we recognize that there are sex and gender issues that need to be factored in when we're understanding something as complex as the brain. The collective wisdom of these two meetings, again, reached the same sort of decisions that many others in this room have, and that is that neuroinformatics, computational modeling, imaging, animal model systems have to be at the core of any national program. And we too hope to build a program that incorporates these principles. The other point that the team came up with, and it's illustrated on the next slide, I think I'll just go to that one, and it's the idea that that genetics obviously has to be at the core of this. And for us, genetics is just as much epigenetics as it is genetics. We're investing quite heavily in that area. We also see the importance of the new CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing procedures, and we're trying to explore whether we could set up national resources for neuro-CRISPR, really, in Canada. The other tremendously important platform has to do with imaging, not just functional brain imaging, but all cellular imaging, all the way up to, obviously, functional brain imaging and network imaging. And our Venn diagram actually puts it at its apex, again, other points that have been made about the importance of directing this research to an understanding of psychological functioning, both of cognition and emotion. And don't be afraid to use the C word. I mean, at some point, we're going to have to try to understand the nature of human consciousness. And as you'll see in a moment on another slide, one of our teams in Canada is very focused on this issue. The other point that was underscored at our meetings of the neuroscience leader groups is that Canada already possesses not only this capacity for networking, But thanks largely to my colleague Alan Evans at McGill University, Canada already has at its disposal something called CBrain, which is a Canadian distributed neuroimaging platform. But CBrain is more than that, or at least the technology behind it is more than that. As this map shows, we're linked across the nation. Both computing and the data processing is in a few areas, but it's shared across the whole country. And it is built on a number of investments that Canada has made in providing wideband connections between its major universities and research institutes. And Alan and his group have developed a fully functioning system for interfacing this resource to individual labs, and it's working beautifully. So while we are delighted to see other initiatives to create similar platforms, we're already there with this system, and we're open for business. The other point I would make is that, so now we're trying to figure out how to fund all this. Well, in parallel with our discussions, the federal government had instituted a new program called the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, and it came in two tranches. The first phase was in 2015, $300 million, and then on September the 6th, we heard the outcome of the second phase, which was $950 million of funding, so the total is 1.25 billion, designed to position Canada's post-secondary institutions to become global research leaders. And as you can see below here, there were 4 out of the 13 programs that were funded, and these are all the health. Everything was in neuroscience. And this is all done by peer review. And when you total these numbers up, it comes to about $250 million. So we have this wonderful new resource, and it's centered, as I said a moment ago, on McGill. Theirs is called Healthy Brains for Healthy Lives. And then also the University of Western Ontario, which has excellence in neurocognition and imaging, is also part of this. But this is the important thing. This is already designed to be interlinked. And so what we're going to do in the next phase is we're going to sit down over the next few months to try to figure out how to expand this network. We have to convince the government that the job is half done, and with a little bit more investment, we're going to be able to reach this aspiration of understanding the brain better and then using this information to understand and treat brain illness, which I think is really the goal for everyone in this room.
Our next speaker represents Australia, Anthony Murfitt, the Minister Counselor for Industry, Science and Education of the Australian Embassy in the US. Welcome.
So good morning, everyone. And as introduced, I'm the Minister Counselor for Industry, Science and Education. I have the luxury of not having a 15-hour flight to get here as I'm located in DC. So it is a pleasure here to talk to you very briefly about what Australia is doing with regard to innovation and science, and specifically in areas around brain research. One of the key things that the Australian government is now proceeding down is really embracing the role of science and research, and this was recognised late last year with the release of our National Innovation and Science Agenda. So this was a package of around $1 billion, and it looked at reinforcing the role in science and innovation in driving economic and social prosperity, looking at international collaborations and the way that Australia could lift its participation, and looking at fundamentals of the science research landscape by providing additional funding in areas such as research infrastructure. Moving on to the areas of brain research, this is an area that Australia is well placed to support. We do have a strong history in this area and its application, using examples such as the cochlear implant. And I'll also talk through some of the other initiatives very, very briefly. To reinforce this message, there is someone much more qualified than me that will talk to this issue, and that's my colleague, Professor Linda White, who will talk about some of the work the Australian Academy of Sciences is currently considering. So moving on to some of the funding activities that are underway within Australia. The first one that comes to mind is with the National Health and Medical Research Centre, in a way akin to the NIH here, in that it's a medical research funding agency. It doesn't actually undertake research itself. There is one thing that the NHMRC does undertake with the US, and that is in relation to the BRAIN initiative that was announced by President Obama a couple of years ago. And so the NHMRC does provide funding to the Australian component of collaborative applications with our US colleagues in areas such as the foundation of human brain imaging, bridging scales, and modalities. The aim of this funding opportunity is to solicit applications around non-invasive human brain imaging and neuroscience recording techniques, and to understand the meaning of the data that is collected. Australia is contributing around 1.5 million to those that initiative. And more recently, those that monitor the Australian science and research funding landscape may have seen that the NHMRC has said it's currently considering, that doesn't mean it's confirmed, but it is letting people know that it's considering supporting Australian research for the two BRAIN initiatives that have opportunities in 2017, and they relate to non-invasive functional human brain imaging and recording and non-invasive neuromodulation, new tools and techniques for precision measurements. I'm pretty impressed I can say a lot of those really big words. Anyway, there will be further information available through the NHMRC in October 2016. With the remaining allotted time, I thought I'd just take this opportunity to talk about some of the other opportunities really focused on international collaboration within Australia. One of the recent ones that we have, it's called a Global Innovation Linkages Fund, and it's really looking to support Australian business and researchers to engage with global partners in areas of priority research, and one of those is in the field of medical technologies and pharmaceuticals. I know I've seen some of the NSF funding figures this morning and the NIH's funding figures, and they sort of dwarf some of the funding that's available through the Australian government. That being said, we are funding projects of around $1 million over 4 years to really drive some of these collaboration in areas such as pharmaceuticals and medical technologies. And that application is actually open at the moment, and it closes on the 20th of October 2016. Another thing that we're trying to do too, and it touches on some of the discussion today about getting some of this great research out to market, is that we've developed things called industry growth centres, and they're very much about working with industry to allow the industry to work out where it wants to go in 10 years' time. And some of the research that's undertaken here sort of really firmly fits in that broader future vision. So we have a framework in place that's looking to work with both research and industry within Australia to work out where we can be competitive 10 years down the track. And finally, I want to touch on to other funding programs that the Australian government has put in place. One is called the Medical Research Futures Fund. So this was essentially a $20 billion endowment that was put aside, and the returns on that funding is going forward towards medical research. That is expected to provide funding of about $1 billion per year. In the next 4 years, it'll build to about $800 million. But again, it's another funding opportunity that is coming online. It is overseen by what we call the Australian Medical Research Advisory Board, and it is looking at ways in which that fund can be used. It has just finished a series of consultation and is preparing a report on priorities to be considered by the Australian government. And finally, before the cricket sounds, I've heard it a couple of times today, it's the Biomedical Translation Fund. And this fund is really around how do we translate some of the research that is being undertaken. And it's $250 million really focused on the biomedical translation component of medical research. I will stop there because I haven't heard the cricket, and I'm more than happy to talk about any of those programs that I've discussed through any of the breaks. Thank you for your time.
So the person probably flew the longest is our next speaker, Linda Richard, Professor, Deputy Director of Queensland Brain Institute from Queensland, Australia. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Corey and Rafa for organising such a fantastic conference. It's a really exciting time to be a neuroscientist anywhere in the world, I think. And Australia is no different. We have organised ourselves to create a vision for Australian neuroscience that we hope will contribute to the global initiatives. This initiative is being led through the Australian Academy of Science and has major supporters from the Australasian Neuroscience Society and the Australian Psychological Society, along with a large number of other organisations. So we're in the startup phase of our Australian Brain Project Alliance. And so we started meeting earlier this year to look at what are the goals that we want to achieve and how can we organise our sector to contribute to the global initiatives. And so we have done, I think, one of the hardest jobs, which is actually to get everybody on board behind this program across our nation. And so we have a very cohesive group that are striving for these goals. So we've started developing our science plan. And as you've just heard, our Australian government is very keen that we engage with industry. And so part of our plan is involves engaging directly with industry partners and also to establish some philanthropic relationships as well, which would really help us get this program off the ground. We plan to launch our Brain Alliance next April. So I was asked to just go over some of the strengths and what perhaps our Australian Brain Initiative could bring to the global Brain Project. And as you may know, the basic scientists would know that Australia has a very long history in neurophysiology, beginning really with our Nobel Prize from Sir John Eccles. But we also have a very strong and long history in neural engineering. And I'd say that this is a great strength in Australia that might not be as evident to some of the basic scientists. One of our major successes has been the cochlear implant. This is one of the most successful neurotechnologies worldwide. Axon Instruments, who make a lot of the recording devices for electrophysiology. And we have a bionic eye program, but also a bionic vision program looking at directly stimulating the visual cortex as opposed to the retina. And we have a number of companies involved in stimulation for control of pain, and these are already in clinical trials. Another thing that we have that we can offer are very well characterised cohorts of different groups. So we have a very active and prominent group working in epilepsy that's led by Sam Berkovich and Ingrid Scheffer. This is mostly around the genetics of epilepsy, but we have a number of other patient cohorts or even subject cohorts that may be of interest. We've got an extensive twin registry, and we have a number of longitudinal cohorts that have been running for 20 plus years with very, very well characterised data, and I can give you more details about those later if you're interested. As I said, we also have major strengths in bioengineering. I'm just going to run through some of the national programs that we have currently going, and these are ones, of course, that we'd like to build on. So we have a Bionics Institute. This is really driving neural prostheses across these different areas. We also have a cooperative research centre for mental health, which is driving in the area of biomarkers for psychiatric disorders. We have a Science of Learning Research Centre. So these are not located in one area in Australia. These are collaborative projects that go across many different laboratories, up to 10 to 20 laboratories across Australia. The Science of Learning Research Centre is really aimed at education. So this is taking what we understand about how the brain learns and applying that to the classroom. And indeed, we have laboratory classrooms that we can bring both teachers and children in to conduct experiments and look at how optimal learning can occur. We also have the Centre for Integrative Brain Function. This also includes 20 laboratories across Australia, and they're really focused on attention, prediction and decision making. And I should say that one of the main drivers for this is our fantastic national infrastructure in terms of brain imaging. So in addition to these, Australians do contribute to a large number of different international consortiums, and I'm not going to list them all here, but we are part of the Enigma consortium and have been major drivers in that. So that's in neuroimaging and genetics. Also in the Psychiatric Genomics Consortium, we've been major drivers in the statistical analysis of genomic data. And actually, I saw George Paxanos was mentioned before in the Japanese initiative. Paxanos and Watson, of course, are Australians, and we have a long history in terms of anatomical atlases. A number of groups are now setting up to do marmoset imaging in Australia as well, in particular at Monash University. So our BRAIN initiative, what is our plan? We have identified 4 grand challenges that we'd like to address: promoting this better health, creating better neural interfaces, so this is in terms of bioengineering. We'd like to really focus on learning, how we learn across the lifespan. And that really runs everything from cellular, molecular work, all the way up to cognitive neuroscience. And then delivering new insights for brain-inspired computing. We also have an extensive group of computational neuroscientists in Australia that are driving this. So these are the groups that are involved, and as I said, the main initiative is being run out of the Australian Academy of Science. So thank you very much.
And our first speaker is Jim Ault, who's going to talk on behalf of the NSF in the US.
Thank you, Raphael. And thank you, Corey, for your tremendous efforts. This is really an exciting day. I'm pleased to be here because I was trained as a neuroscientist, and it's fantastic to see something like this happen. When Congress directed us to move in this direction, I saw it as a real turning moment. As I mentioned in a recent Nature comment piece, there is a need for continuous global investment in neuroscience, and I see each country that is represented here today as a member of a team, as this must certainly be a coordinated effort. We can see that all great complicated problems, gravitational waves to the complexity of the human brain, really require that kind of team approach. Let me tell you about what we do at the NSF with regard to the BRAIN Initiative. As you know, the NSF is the science agency in the United States that supports basic scientific research. There is no intramural research component. The NSF has a budget request from the President of approximately $8 billion for fiscal year 17. Of the NSF's 3 strategic goals in its strategic plan, the first is to, quote, transform the frontiers of science and engineering, unquote. And this is what we seek to achieve in the context of the BRAIN Initiative. Our approach to neuroscience is multi-directorate. We have all of these disciplines of science and technology represented under one roof. Understanding the brain is not a problem of biology alone, but one that can best be furthered with insights from physics, mathematics, chemistry, material science, engineering, and computer science. By choosing challenges in neuroscience that demand expertise in all of these areas, we at NSF seek to promote convergent neuroscience, in which disciplinary boundaries are invisible and conceptual discoveries and breakthroughs in our understanding of brain function are accelerated to an unprecedented pace. We're distinct from our colleagues at NIH in that you won't see brain diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's up here, but what you will see is a holistic approach to understanding the healthy brain. And it encompasses one high-level goal that drives many of our brain-related funding activities. We believe that multi-scale integration of the dynamic structure and activity of the brain is a key for understanding how the brain functions to control behavior and cognition. To integrate the multimodal data across scales, we must promote the development of neurotechnologies, infrastructure, theory and modeling of brain function, as well as train a new generation of researchers for the future workforce. Then we can look ahead to brain-inspired concepts and designs, which will likely have profound effects on society. NSF is a serious player in this research effort. The NSF has increased its funding to approximately $75 million annually for the BRAIN initiative and hopes to double this number moving into the future. Most of our activities under the BRAIN initiative to date have supported projects that advance our understanding of the function of neural circuits across the phylogenetic spectrum, while at the same time fostering integrative approaches to tackle compelling questions in the field. As new innovative technologies to lead to new discoveries about brain structure, research on brain function and activity will lead to better understanding of behavior and cognition. NSF realizes the need to share and standardize and utilize tools across research disciplines. We have described a phased, community-driven approach to doing this in this Dear Colleague letter, and our approaches have referred to this effort as a National Brain Observatory, while some in the community have referred to this as an International Brain Station. NSF understands the need to maintain a broad spectrum of funding mechanisms to ensure the most innovative and creative ideas receive the support they need. Through the BRAIN initiative, we have called for early concept grants for exploratory research. Those are called EAGER awards, ideas labs, and solicitations for integrative strategies to understanding neural and cognitive systems. Our newest call, NeuroNext, is a highly flexible mechanism designed to solicit proposals that will develop and disseminate innovative neurotechnologies and/or theoretical frameworks that will transform our understanding of the linkages between neural activity and cognition and behavior across different systems, environments, and species, while also providing an avenue for widespread dissemination of these technologies and theoretical frameworks, as well as broad training opportunities for junior folks. 2 weeks ago, we received letters of interest for 134 NeuroNext projects. We will use this solicitation in the future to invite foreign and private partners to help us accelerate the dissemination of neurotechnologies and theoretical frameworks across the globe. Thank you for your attention, and I'm really excited about today.
Thank you, Jim. Now, on behalf of the NIH, let me introduce Walter Koracek, Director of NINDS.
Great, thanks very much. Pleasure to be here. And I want to give a brief overview of where we are from the NIH's funding of the Brain Initiative projects. And hope that Josh Gordon's in the audience. He's a new co-director, just announced as a new Institute Director for National Institute of Mental Health. So together we'll be working this forward. So the Brain Initiative is focused on developing neurotechnologies to try to understand how brain circuits work. This has many implications for basic science, but from the clinical side, I wanted to say that we've been held back in trying to understand disorders of the nervous system because we do not have the technologies necessary to see what the circuit dysfunction is. We don't understand them. The technologies we're using are primarily EEG from the 1920s, fMRI, which has lots of problems with temporal and spatial performance. And so we really need new technologies to try and bridge the gap between what we know about the molecular basis of disease and what actually happens to the patient, because in between that is circuit dysfunction. That is the core on which the patient's disability stands, and that's what we really need to understand to make a difference for patients moving forward. The NIH Brain Initiative is directed by a very scholarly report called Brain 2025, put together by a committee of folks who really took off their hats and tried to look at the future and give us guide for how we might develop these technologies, in what space, and for what purpose. There are basically 7 priority areas. The first is discovering diversity. If you think of the brain as a large very effective computer, the first thing you want to know is what are the components, what are the different cell types in the brain, how are they connected, what are their properties. So deep phenotyping of the different cell types called discovering diversity. The brain is information processing machine. It's doing this at multiple different scales. At very low-level scales, micron level, where synapse occurs and information crosses from one cell to another, to a whole network of bordering cells that are interconnected, to those cells connected to many other nuclei throughout the brain. And so when we perform an action, it's not coming out of one particular area. It's a network activity. And trying to understand the brain at these multiple scales is probably the most daunting task. I wish Einstein had put his effort on this problem, because this is a really tough problem. I know gravitational waves, they're kind of nice, but this is a tough problem. What we want to understand is how these circuits create behavior. So I'm talking now, you're thinking now, maybe you're looking at your iPhone. Your brain networks are generating that behavior. How do we do that? So to get a dynamic picture of the brain, functioning brain, to know what the information processing that's going on that's responsible for our behaviors, but not just sticking with some association. I see this kind of activity, I see this kind of behavior, but to actually get the causality. We now have the tools now where we can actually measure thousands and thousands of neurons in their activity during a behavior, develop a model that we think then causes that behavior, but then prove it by targeting specific neuronal subtypes to disturb the circuit and try and predict what that would be on behavior. So that's getting at causality. We think that our understanding of brain activity is incredibly rudimentary in terms of its in terms of the network principles that underlie behavior. Rafa talks about this, we've been trying to understand how what Gone with the Wind is, why watching it one pixel at a time over and over again. Good luck trying to figure out what that movie's about if you can only see one pixel at a time. We need to see thousands and thousands of pixels at a time to understand what are the fundamental principles by which that network activity gives rise to behavior. And we don't have the tools to do that, although they look like they're coming. Finally, from the National Institutes of Health, our purpose is to decrease the burden of disease due to psychiatric and neurological disorders, substance abuse disorders. Many of these are inherently circuit disorders, some of which have no pathology that we know underlies them. It's purely getting at the circuits that's going to tell us about schizophrenia, autism, multiple psychiatric disorders. And in neurologic disorders, we have examples where by pure luck, well, not quite luck, people did have an understanding of basal ganglia circuits, but it's amazing that you could stick a wire into the brain of someone who has Parkinson's disease, turn on electric current, and their symptoms go away, because you have proof that by intervening in these circuits, you can have tremendous public health advance. And we need to do this for the other disorders. So here is where we are now. So we have the president announcing the Brain Initiative. We have a multi-council working group that then oversees our work. We had a first round of Brain Awards in September of 2014. So these awards have only been out for a short period of time. We have brain PI meetings with National Science Foundation and the NIH investigators, where we get people together. And the next one, we're trying to expand and actually reach out internationally and to the general public about what the Brain Initiative is. The Brain Initiative Alliance, Kavli, Simons, all the federal partners, Janelia, Allen Brain Institute, have come together to work and coordinate our activities, but also to communicate as a group called the Brain Initiative Alliance. Neuroethics, there are serious neuroethical issues that we are going to bring to the forefront for society to think about. The European Brain Initiative and the US have neuroethics teams that are working in this space. But this is going to be quite important moving forward, because as we understand brain activity in humans, if we can measure it, if we can intervene, these are things that are getting at what makes us human, whose identity is it, and who owns this kind of information in terms of what's coming out of people's brain activity. We have a second Brain PI meeting in December. Third round of Brain Awards are just coming out, and the third PI meeting is in December in Bethesda. This is where the money's gone. Here's millions of dollars on the y-axis, the different years, And Amy Adams, who is our head of our outreach for BRAIN, has a very interesting color coding system where you can see where the different bins of funds have gone. And for 17, we're working in the same bins, but we have a couple of projects where we're moving from the investigator-initiated small teams to try and get large teams to form. It's not quite LIGO, but it's a step forward in neuroscience, which is really quite new to this area. Lots of things have happened. There's been very interesting results and technologies that have kind of come out of the woodwork, and quite surprising how good they are performing. So we're quite excited about how things are going. I'm just going to end with this. It's an example of how when you build new technologies, you can never know what the results are going to be. So Arnold Krickstein, working in the cell census, looking at fetal brain tissue, identified a radioglial cell that gives rise to the cells that form the cortex. Turns out in that transcriptome analysis, he found those cells have a receptor for the Zika virus. So here, something quite unexpected, but this is what you can predict will happen as these new technologies come along. Really great things. You don't know where they're coming from. I encourage people at Society for Neuroscience to come to our Brain Initiative Alliance session, and thanks very much.
So our next speaker is Jason Matheny, representing the director of the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Agency of the United States. Jason.
I love this format. It's sort of like international speed dating. So I come from IARPA, which is an advanced research and development funding organization for the intelligence community in the United States. So you might think that we're especially then secretive, but actually most of what we do is unclassified, openly published. We're probably best known for our research in high-performance computing, machine learning, and research on human judgment. But we also spend over $40 million a year on research in applied neuroscience. That's aligned with the BRAIN Initiative. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we're funding right now and some opportunities to partner with us. We fund research in over 300 universities, colleges, companies, NGOs, and over a dozen countries around the world. Our work in neuroscience involves several of the countries represented here and many of the universities represented here. Our research programs in neuroscience right now are large, multi-year, multi-site programs. We typically spend something on the order of $10 to $20 million per year per program. Right now, our investments aligned with the BRAIN Initiative are split across 3 programs. One called Microns, led by Jacob Fogelstein, is focused on reverse engineering the cortical circuits of the neocortex in order to understand the problems that Tom described earlier. How is it that the human brain is able to process information so efficiently, both in terms of energy efficiency as well as in terms of sparse data? And that program involves over 20 universities and companies in 3 countries. The SHARP program, led by Alexis Janot, is focused on safe, non-invasive neurotechnologies for cognitive enhancement in healthy adults. Human judgment features prominently in intelligence analysis, so finding ways of boosting the pattern recognition ability of high-performing adults is a priority for us. That program involves over a dozen universities and companies in 3 countries in the world. Lastly, our Kearns program, Knowledge Representation and Neural Systems, led also by Jacob Fogelstein, is focused on the problem of how the human brain encodes and represents concepts. And that work is now, I think, entering its next to last year and involves, I believe, 5 universities and other organizations in 2 different countries. So there are multiple ways for international partnerships in our work. The first is that we are openly publishing not only the results, but also the data. that result from our research investments. So if you go to our website at iarpa.gov, you can find links to results and data. You'll also find that we have open solicitations for research. They're open year-round, including those not only aligned with our research programs, but also those that we call seedlings that are meant to lay the groundwork for future research investments. You can have informal discussions with our program managers well in advance of submitting a formal proposal, which reduces the amount of work on your end, and I think brings sort of the success rate of proposal acceptance by something like 5% to around 80%. Lastly, you can follow us on Twitter, which is odd for an intelligence organization, but I recommend it. It's a way for tracking what new research solicitations we're putting out. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Now we turn our attention to what's going on in Europe. And to lead off the European contingent, we have Karim Berkouk, the Deputy Head of Research and Innovation of the European Commission. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Karim Berkouk from the European Commission, and we work on non-communicable diseases and the challenge of healthy aging. First of all, thank you for inviting us for this event, which is extremely timely. And I will speak about the EU effort in brain research. We all agree that brain represents one of the biggest research challenges of the 21st century. In particular, it's dual challenge. In one hand, we need to understand the physiological mechanism underlying the normal functioning of the brain, such as how does it develop, how does it control the whole body, what is memory, etc. But on the other hand, this functioning of normal brain provokes a huge global health challenge to all ages. With brain-related disorders, babies, children, teenagers, adults, the elderly population all have their specific disease. In Europe, we have 179 million that are affected by brain diseases, and we spend something like 800 billion a year on that. The lack of understanding of the brain contributes greatly to the high attrition rates in drug development, especially in Alzheimer's disease, as you see on the bottom right. Only 0.5% of the drug developed make it to the market. To address this dual challenge, the EU has built a strategic brain research portfolio which addresses the continuum from better knowledge to delivery of care. The keywords of EU research is about collaborations and partnerships. Collaborative research is a hallmark of EU research. This all started for political reasons when Europe was building itself, but it was meant to strive a European cohesion, and it ended up being a very sound scientific solution, with the best researchers in Europe working together around the project with complementary expertise. We have built also the public-private partnership in health research, which is called the Innovative Medicine Initiative, which is dedicated to speed up drug delivery and innovative therapy. And we have also the public-public partnership, where the European Union works with the member states in order to coordinate and align national strategies. We also work with international funders like the NIH, the Canadian, through international research cooperation. We have that on the Global Alliance for Chronic Diseases, where the next call would be on mental disorder, and in the Traumatic Brain Injury Initiative. And of course, we have the ICT-based research infrastructure, the Human Brain Project. And I will go very quickly to each of these to explain what they are. But first of all, I would like to emphasize that the overarching driver of EU research now is personalized medicine, or precision medicine, how you call it here. We exploit personalized medicine potential to develop a medicine which is based on data and not on symptoms. And personalized medicine affects the whole cycle of research and innovation. We use it for defining new taxonomy and to stratify patients for better prevention, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatments. In our collaborative research, for instance, in the seventh framework program, which was the financial arm of the European Union, which ran from 2007 to 2013, we have put some 3 billion euros in brain research, going through from collaborative research, blue sky research, but also training and mobility grants. And you will see in which area we have put that on the graph on the left. And you will see that 40% went to understanding the brain, while the rest was targeting diseases. And through this collaboration, we have created almost 20,000 connections between partners of the project. And just one slide to say some of the results of the closed research project. For instance, the 100 projects on brain research were closed. They generated knowledge with more than 4,000 publication with an average impact factor of 9. And they created also innovation through patent applications and spin-offs. The Innovative Medicine Initiative has pioneered a new scale of public-private partnership between the European Commission and the pharmaceutical industry. It's also contributed in reversing the trend for large pharmaceutical industry to leave brain research, which was the case in the last 10 years. And basically, it has helped in de-risking or sharing the risk in drug development in areas such as the brain. Neurodegenerative disease is high on the agenda of IMI, and they have made the Alzheimer platform in 2015. For instance, one of the projects, the European Medical Information Framework, EMIF, is developing a platform for the reuse of medical data, connecting data of more than 53 million individuals. You may know that at European level, we actually manage 5% of the R&D expenditure in Europe. The 95% remaining are in the member states. In that context, it's very important to implement and define strategies that are convergent throughout Europe. And we do that, for instance, with the joint programming initiative on neurodegenerative diseases. This approach can make greater impacts more quickly and reduce wasteful duplication. The GPND on neurodegenerative medicine has invested some more than 110 million euro now. And we have another area where countries put money together in neuroscience, in neuron. And there we have they have invested 80 million so far. And of course, we have the Human Brain Project, which is as the digital era is accelerating its pace, we have to make sure that digital technology is used for the full potential to address societal challenges. So it's really a federated infrastructure all around Europe, but I won't say much about that because we have the next speaker, the executive director, Mr. Eber, who will speak about that. And to finish off, I will say that what is the EU offering in brain research? So it's a network of collaborative research, a public-private partnership, an established framework for countries to coordinate their research, strong experience in international cooperation, and an ICT infrastructure for brain research. And we firmly believe that if we manage to federate all these large-scale brain initiatives worldwide, we will further accelerate global progress and boost impact. We will then contribute to reducing the dual challenge into a single one on the healthy brains. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is the Executive Director of the Human Brain Project of the EU, Christoph Ebel.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Ebel. I'm directing the management, the coordination of the Human Brain Project that was just mentioned. I would like to give you a quick overview on what the project is, where it is right now, where we're going, and also how we can collaborate since this is a coordination meeting. The aim of the HVP is described on this slide, and you will see that there are multiple components to that. The real fundamental driver, I believe, is that this infrastructure is going to help accelerate brain research and cognitive neuroscience. It will not only do that, but it also help by understanding or helping to understand how the brain actually works in terms of reproducing certain elements of it in an ICT environment. I think it will actually be an infrastructure in a couple of years from now that can help everyone's efforts around the world and exchange those efforts much better. The focus really on an infrastructure is something that helped us focus a lot of our effort, and I was very appreciative of the talk by a colleague from LEGO, because I think the challenges are very similar, and I think we should have talked earlier, actually, because we could have avoided some of the problems we had, or well, let's say childhood diseases. Let me just go quickly through through where we're coming from here. The project, just to give you an idea of the size, and I mean some of these are actually comparable, I think, to what we've seen. The nominal funding is about €1 billion over 10 years, as the previous speaker said, a combination of public and public funding from the European Commission and public funding from the member states, but increasing industry participation as well. It's 120 partners in 21 countries, about 1,000 researchers roughly involved there. You can see here a little bit the evolving situation. We started in 2013 with an initial ramp-up phase. Went through the roadmap, redesign basically to kind of bring in the what we learned in the first 2 years, and that's really where we are currently. We have a revised scientific roadmap, which is available on our website. We have also adjusted and revised and rebuilt our whole governance system to actually adapt to that infrastructure challenge much better. We have agreed with the Commission, the European Commission, and our partners in the member states on an agenda, and we got this agenda funded. So this is, I think, a very good moment actually to talk, to coordinate with other brain initiatives around the world, especially also with with you here today. Let's just have a quick look at the HPP infrastructure. I call it the SRI for Service-Based Research Infrastructure. Okay, so this is it is not obviously a computer that sits somewhere and where brain simulation runs on it, but it's a federated infrastructure, and you can see a little bit how it's structured here. Okay, that's the beam here, right? No, it's not. Okay. Here, the access here, in principle, this is what our product will look like to the outside world, with the web accessible collaborative hub, with the entry point for all the platforms from brain simulation to neuromorphic platforms. Basically, this is where brain research, neuroscientists, industry can go in and utilize the infrastructure. What we're doing right now, I mean, this is in the building phase, right? We're 2 years into the project. What we're doing now is integrating the components of base infrastructure. That means high performance computing, the networks that we have in Europe, the big infrastructures that we have, the high performance computing infrastructures, with a set of software custom built services that will actually bring out those research offerings that the infrastructure will provide. And this is in development, and it is in development with the scientific community. In this sense, it is also a scientific project, obviously, because none of this actually is useful if it's not co-designed with the end user, with the scientists who are going to actually use this in mind. They have to be part of this process. As you can see, the core project, the project is funded by the Commission, and here's again the link to a strong funding agency, in this case the European Commission, who has a commitment to that, a long-term commitment that's absolutely essential for bringing this forward. But we have to integrate it with national components. And that's the actual engineering package, I think, that we're now starting to deploy and deliver. What we're also doing is a user engagement strategy, because obviously we have to balance carefully and successfully the technology push and the demand side. So the supply and the demand side have to be matched in a meaningful way. And finally, I think here what we're doing today is really the smart integration with global initiatives on multiple levels. When I say multiple levels, I mean really from the individual PI, from labs up to policy integration on the top level of the agencies involved. Here's a rough roadmap, and you can see we're right now. This is the infrastructure roadmap that we have, very rough. We are basically at this level here, the prototype research infrastructure. We right now have a small user base. We are working with those people very closely. They're getting all the support they need. Their friends and family almost at this point. This is kind of our midterm goal here, and obviously in about 7 to 8 to 10 years, we're going to be in this area, hopefully. So basically, at this point, again, we are at a very, very good point in time for starting the collaborations with the other global brain initiatives to make sure that we are, in fact, also adapting to what they need and they adapting to what we need. So there's a certain need now for this convergence. The next steps for us is also to create this a structure, a home, so to speak, for this infrastructure, which is a legal entity, sort of an international organization, which will help us to coordinate the national and the international components in one coherent infrastructure offering. Coordination with global initiatives here. This is my last slide here. On many different ways, we have different areas of engagement on the user base, what I talked about before, this the demand side. Co-designing, absolutely essential right now. There can be component or base service suppliers, data supply, data sharing, and of course, on the more policy level or research policy level, joint road mapping where appropriate. So I think that's from my side, that's the Human Brain Project in a nutshell, and we'll look at the scientific side of that in just a minute. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is the Scientific Director of the Human Brain Project of the EU, Katrien Amunds.
Okay, so hello everybody, and I would like to introduce a scientific part of this project. And the understanding of the human brain is one of our greatest challenges that we are facing now, and we want to understand it because we want to get more insight into basic neuroscientific questions, but we also want to understand what makes us humans. We want to help, at the end, patients with neurological and psychiatric diseases, and we would also like to contribute to develop new technologies, brain-inspired technologies in this field. And you have heard in the last talk more about the structure of the human brain, and you can see, of course, on our website how the project is structured. The major components, these are 12 scientific sub-projects. And in the following, I will give you some concrete examples illustrating what are the challenges, what are the needs, and where are perhaps the contact points. And I would like to start from the fact that the brain has a multi-level and multi-scale organization. And I think this is really crucial to have this in mind. And the brain has different levels of organization and space, as you can see here, from the macroscopical level down to the molecular architecture, and even at each spatial level, there are different aspects which contribute to brain organization. And of course, a way to integrate these different levels of brain organization is to have an atlas. And such an atlas should be multimodal. it should be multi-scale. And it is also clear that this is not just a viewer, but there's a database behind it. And that there is a strategy and neuroinformatics tools that enable to integrate this data, to collect it, but also to share this data with other communities. And that means that such an atlas will have, of course, different aspects included, which are represented in this atlas according to the brain topography. And again, I think this is a very crucial point because the brain has this very spatial type of organization, and knowing it and representing the different aspects of brain organization helps us to make interferences between the different fields. So how do we want to address this multi-level system? Well, we have 3 or 4 neuroscience projects which are dealing with the mouse brain, the human brain, and cognitive systems. There is a mathematical and theory sub-project which is providing the theoretical foundations of brain research. And we have infrastructure or ICT platform sub-projects which are neuroinformatics, simulation, high-performance computing and analytics, medical informatics, neuromorphic computing, and robotics. And to integrate, again, these, so to say, these columns, we have developed co-design projects that bring together neuroscientists on the one hand and developers of the infrastructure on the other hand. So let me provide now concrete examples how this works. So if you have a look, for instance, at the synaptic level of organization, then our colleagues from Spain, in particular, Javier de Felipe, is analyzing, for instance, the dendrites and the spines. And the morphology of the spines directly reflects its function. And I think this is a very nice example that structure and function, of course, are only one side or two sides of one and the same aspect of brain organization. And very often it's not possible to tease apart these two aspects. So we would like to address both the structure and the function because we do not think that it makes sense and it's possible always to subdivide that. And when we go to the higher level, to the dendritic and axonal architecture, then Hype Mansfelder, for instance, in collaboration with Jedan Seges, they are analyzing the morphology of neurons in the human brain and in the mouse brain. And based on the morphology of the segments of dendrites in human neurons and in mouse neurons, they come up with a model and then simulate how the activity of this neuron can be predicted based on the morphological features. And they find interesting differences between mouse brain and human brain neurons, which are functionally relevant. So I think one of the major foci that we should address in our brain initiatives is to be clear what are the differences and what are the similarities across the different species. So when we can get examples of knowledge from the mouse brain, this is of course fine, but we should precisely understand for each application what can be delivered, what can be applied for the human brain based, for instance, on mouse brain studies. And here you see an example using 3D polarized light imaging for revealing the axonal architecture in the brain, how we can use one and the same method in different species in order to discuss in more detail homologies or analogies, better to say. And when it comes to the human brain architecture of the connectivity, and this is one of the really difficult challenges that we have in human brain research, we are facing, of course, the problem of a huge amount of different data. And here you see an example of a human brain section, and the color codes the direction of fiber tracks running in the brain in this particular section, but in 3D. So the more black the dots are, the more is the inclination in the sections, and the other colors indicate what is the direction of fibers in the other directions. So having such a method, we are able now for the first time, I think, to go to the 3D architecture of a full human brain connectome. And this is accompanied, of course, with lots of data, so 40 gigabyte if we have only one single section, and we have about 3,000 for one single brain. So we have to develop workflows based on high performance computing, and we use the supercomputers, which are part of the PRAISE network in Jülich in Switzerland, but also in Barcelona. And we are developing new workflows that allow us to significantly speed up the analysis of fiber tracts in the human brain. And here is a last example where we have 3D reconstructed the basal ganglia, the striatum, in a vervet brain monkey. And what you see here really is a stack of images showing all the nice details that we can see in the striatum. And now really to go back to higher resolution approaches using electron microscopy, for instance, or modern optical images, we can bring together these different aspects of connectivity in this particular brain. So for the long time, we would like to create this European research infrastructure to collaborate, to share, in order to achieve a better understanding of the human brain. And this is also having in mind that we should contribute to analyzing the brain and its diseases. Simulation is one of the crucial tools to analyze the human brain, and simulating and also big data analytics are only feasible when we have the right infrastructure, and this is one of our major efforts in the next few years. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Catherine. Our next speaker will represent France. Is the Counselor of Science and Technology of the Embassy of France in the US, Dr. Miham Pham.
Okay, so today I'm here in my capacity of Counselor for Science and Technology at the French Embassy, but my former training was in neurobiology, so I'd like to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity today to give you an overview of the involvement of French research teams into brain projects. So I would like first to stress out a new funding, research and innovation governmental funding, which is called Investment for the Future. And this program has 6 priorities, as you see here, but interestingly, we got up to 47 billion euros, among which more than 20 billion were dedicated to higher education and research. So this has totally changed the landscape in higher education and research these last years. So here you see part of this money which has been dedicated to neuroscience, which allow us to create a range of tools or to organize new tools, such as cohorts. I'm sorry, I'm not very good with this. Yes, so cohorts. We also have institutes, a joint institute between hospitals and universities. We have networks of technological platforms. We also have networks of laboratories, and you can see the map of France. As usual, it's very much concentrated around Paris, but not only, also in the south of France. Here you see also that we have developed 18 clinical investigation centers. Again, it's you have the map here. These clinical investigation centers have been created by INSERM, which is our French NIH, and joint hospital university centers for clinical protocols and volunteers and patients. Now, as for the research teams in neuroscience, again, you see a high concentration around Paris, but also in the south of France, close to Marseille, which is a great center also in neuroscience in France. All this activity is coordinated in France, but by what we call an alliance, Aviaison, which is for French Alliance in Life Science and Health, which gather all the research institutions, universities, and also funding agencies in charge of working on life science at large. This alliance is organized into 9 thematic institutes, which are virtual institutes. It's mainly networking of people. And one is dedicated to neuroscience, cognitive sciences, neurology, and psychiatry. The activity of this alliance is to define priorities, and you can see here that these priorities are largely shared with what we have heard before. And the key figures I would like, well, the take-home message is here. So neuroscience in France represents 20% of biomedical research. We have something like 750 research teams. The staff is more than 5,000 people, the 8 clinical investigation centers. It allows something like 12,000 publication per year, and from this program Investment of the Future, we got roughly 200 million euros for neuroscience. Now, just to open it to international and European collaboration, of course, we have the national programs, and as previously mentioned, but we are part of all the programs that have been mentioned, especially by the European Commission. And I also want to stress out a specific French-American program between ANR, which is more or less our French NSF, together with NSF. And this program is a collaborative research in computational neuroscience. And the next annual meeting will be held in Paris in October. So if you need more information, please feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Now speaking on behalf of the German government is Dr. Benedikt Grote from Ludwig Maximilian University.
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I have no slides since 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I didn't know that I would present, but it's a pleasure to do it now. I'm actually talking in behalf of the Neuroscience Reviewing Board of the German Research Foundation, the DFG, so the equivalent of the National Science Foundation. I would like to give you a little bit of flavor about the German funding system and where the partners can be identified for the Global Brain Project. The German system is characterized by a kind of dualistic approach. On the one hand, we have a top-down funding system that goes through the federal government. You may have heard about the Helmholtz Health Centers and other large-scale funding schemes. For example, the German Center for Neurodegenerative Diseases is one of them. That's about 50 million per year going to a central facility plus some satellites. Big goals, but very specific, big questions, but quite specific goals. On the other hand, the federal government is also funding or is trying to implement infrastructure where it is missing. The Bernstein Center for Computational Neuroscience and the Bernstein Network would be the prime example for me. It was missing as a focus area in Germany, but 10 years ago we started to implement these Bernstein centers, and it's now an inherent part of the neuroscience community. It's a partner of the Human Brain Project, and it's a natural partner also for any kind of global initiative. So this is kind of focus areas via these top-down approaches. On the other side, we have a strong bottom-up approach, self-organizing, purely research-driven, based on curiosity, consortia that are more or less local. They are mainly funded through the German Research Foundation, the DFG, very often in very tight collaboration with the Max Planck Institutes and others on local sites. The collaborative research centers, or SFBs, are famous for that, have been ever since the Second World War. The training centers and graduate schools come through such systems. And this is what I would like to focus on, the excellence clusters. Due to the Excellence Initiative that started about 10 years ago, again, in Germany, we have these very generous and very flexible funds that go to local consortia, again, University, Max Planck, Helmholtz, whoever is contributing. There are at least 4, if not 5, as far as I can recall, within Germany, out of about 40 plus. And the Excellence Initiative is going to a next phase. The pre-proposals are due in March, and in 2019, the funding will start in the 7-year framework. Very generous funding and a natural partner for anything that comes through such global initiatives, because it gives the necessary flexibility. Again, it's mostly local, it's interdisciplinary, and it's extremely flexible. Finally, I would like to make a few notes out of what we discussed in the reviewing board at the German Research Foundation. That is also coming out of the kind of German tradition. We have learned in the last 10 years, mainly to the Human Gene Project, that our brain in the last 60 million years has been in a very specific state, based on its genetics, based on how the mutation implemented in the genome shaped the brain as it is now. I would urge all initiatives to keep that in mind and to keep phylogeny in mind. We have to get out of the bottleneck of a few model systems. And I think in particularly with NSF, with partners like the DFG, and under a framework of the Global Brain Initiative, we could kind of get to that point that we use with modern genetic tools these animals that are suitable for questions. The mouse is not possibly always the best model, and even the macaque. I would also urge that we should try to not only be neurocentered. Only once today I heard about clear cells. I think 50% plus cells in our brain deserve enough attention, although of course we all are more driven by understanding neurons. Finally, my last remark, let's not overstate with all the enthusiasm that we have. This is a wonderful project. I think it's going to get us to a new state, but let's not overstate. Let's not raise expectations by the taxpayers that we cannot meet up with. Thank you.
Our next speaker will represent the UK, the head of neuroscience and mental health of the MRC. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to be here today. I just wanted to speak very briefly about the Medical Research Council and our mission, which is about improving human health. So I'm going to come at this probably slightly differently from previous speakers in kind of outlining roughly where we sit within the kind of translational pipeline, if you like, of research. We sit probably in this kind of schematic across the middle of the slide here, towards the left-hand end, starting from basic discovery research all the way through to kind of early clinical trials. And we partner in the UK with a number of other research councils and medical research charities and the Department of Health from England and the devolved nations, who sort of span the different areas of this trajectory. I would just like to say that we do still partner with European initiatives and Europeans, and we hope to continue to do so. So one of the things that we do is all funding organisations, I'm sure, recognises we have strategies, we are trying to articulate what these are, and we have to make an argument to government as to what it is we're going to do over set periods of time. In the last spending review, we made a commitment to government that we would sort of look at a number of priority challenge areas. And one of those has been lifelong brain health. And we've made a large contribution and investment in the area of dementia research. And I'll come back to that in a second. Another thing I think that's important, especially for this audience today, is how we kind of go about some of this investment. And that is through informatics and computation, perhaps more in the bioinformatics space than in the neuroinformatics space, but we have investments there too. And as has already been highlighted today, the importance of interdisciplinarity for discovery science is vital. As I mentioned, dementia is hugely important for us in the lifelong brain health space, but we're also invested in the neurodevelopmental disorders and understanding what happens as brains develop. And actually, I think something that probably hasn't been discussed yet today is the brain doesn't sit in isolation. We're also interested in those external factors that influence brain and behavior, such as socioeconomic status, environment, and other biological factors, and also how the brain influences the body and vice versa. So briefly now to dementia, we've made a large investment in something called the Dementias Platform UK, which brings together over 30 cohorts within the United Kingdom who have been fantastically well phenotyped. Their data from all of these individuals is linked to their National Health Service records, which gives a huge opportunity in the future to be able to stratify patient groups and think about methodological experimental medicine programs that could happen in the future. Some of the I guess, power of this platform comes from recent investments that have been made. One in the imaging enhancement to the UK Biobank, which is one of the cohorts that makes up the Dementias platform, and you'll hear a lot more about that later on this afternoon. Another initiative that we funded recently in partnership with the Department of Health in England is something called the Deep and Frequent Phenotyping Study, which is an excellent description of what it's going to do. It's taking roughly 200 patients with early stage Alzheimer's disease and probably on an almost monthly basis, I believe, taking a variety of measurements from imaging and other modalities to assess their progression over a 12-month period, which should then help us understand better about the progression of the disorder over a period of time. And then the follow-up studies will link into some of the IMI studies that have already been mentioned today. Another initiative which we're very excited about, which is just starting, kind of kicked off with ministerial support and then turned into prime ministerial support, although the Prime Minister at the time has gone on to do different things now, but we still have some very high support in government for this. And we are working together with two large Alzheimer's charities in the UK, Alzheimer's Society and Alzheimer's Research UK, to create a new model of funding for dementia in the UK in the Dementia Research Institute, which is a large investment bringing together people who will look at sort of innovative discovery science and using model systems, cell models, molecular studies, and humans to provide a new kind of way of looking at discovery research in this space. It's a slightly distributed model in that there will be a central hub which will be announced in the next wee while. There'll be a director appointed. The directorship interviews are happening in 2 days' time. So hopefully within the next while, we'll be able to make some announcements about how the leadership for this will go ahead. But as I say, there'll be a central hub for the research and linked to a number of centres around the UK, all of whom will have incredibly close and ongoing collaborations with overseas collaborators. So we see this as a real kind of penumbra of research that will be going on in the dementia research space. And as you can see, there's a whole kind of alphabet soup of various different kinds of initiatives that it will be able to link up to, some of which are funded by us, some of which are funded by Department of Health, and others of which are international collaborations. And finally, I just wanted to make a few comments around our investments in medical informatics. And in a similar vein to our Dementia Research Initiative, we're also putting some large investment into medical informatics, which again spans the spectrum of the research that the Medical Research Council funds. So it's not just about neuroscience, it's not just about mental health or neurology. However, there is so much to be learned in this kind of cross-disciplinary space that we don't want to be reinventing wheels here. So I'm sure that there is an awful lot that can be learned from other disciplines around the world that will help in this endeavour. And this new institute will bring together informatics investments that we've already made around the UK, in north of the border in Scotland as well, in biomedical informatics, and something called the FAR Institute, which is set across 4 institutions already. And I have just a couple of thoughts around cooperation that we, as from a sort of MRC perspective, we do collaborate, we do partner a lot, and we have stakeholders that include funders from both the UK, EU, and further afield, both from the government and from charity sectors. We also partner with industry, and I think that's another important sector to not forget when they're thinking about partnership and linking together findings. And then we just have to think about what some of the specific aims are, the questions that need to be answered and the questions that can be answered. And so finally, here's just some coordinates for if you need to contact me at a later date. Okay, thank you.
I apologize for not mentioning her name. It's Catherine Haddock, was speaking on behalf of the MRC in the UK. And our last speaker for the session is representing Israel, Ophir Akunis, the Minister of Science, Technology and Space. Ophir, welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you for the invitation, of course. I arrived this morning from Jerusalem, and I bring greetings from the State of Israel, the startup nation. We are a country dedicated to cutting-edge science and advanced research on the brain and other areas of vital importance to humanity. As Israel's Minister of Science, I am deeply honored to represent Israel at this important meeting. I am delighted to participate in this distinguished international conference of the brain research community. This is a unique opportunity to transform the progress achieved by our countries into a global effort to benefit our communities and the world. This vital field of brain research and brain technology is truly inspiring. It combines the most diverse disciplines to expand our knowledge of the brain. Brain research conducted in Israel and by the world community contributes to the extension and improvement of the quality of human life. In Israel, brain research is conducted by hundreds of independent research groups across the country in our nation's research universities, colleges, and hospitals. These groups investigate the wide spectrum of brain. The Israeli researchers are at the forefront of their field, ever striving to advance our understanding of this fascinating and the most important organ, the brain. The aim at discovering improved therapies and cures. My friends, the Israeli Ministry of Science decided that brain research will be national top priority field of research, and that policy includes bilateral joint funding cooperation programs with a lot of countries. The Israeli government and its science community are well aware of the great benefits that collaboration between scientists has been on the achievement made in research. This perception led to the founding of the Brain Science Knowledge Center at the Hadassah Hebrew University Medical Center in Jerusalem. This center is a comprehensive resource providing professional guidance and services to the researchers from academia and industry. There's a lot of examples to collaboration with the United Kingdom, with France, with Italy, with Germany, with the United States, of course. Our meeting here today at the Rockefeller University is a wonderful opportunity to promote the essential collaboration between different actors in the scientific, academic, and the medical communities, as well as with industry executives, investors, and engineers. I'm certain that it will contribute to building strong bonds. I call on you, I suggest you to collaborate and cooperate with Israel in expanding the boundaries of the emerging large-scale international brain project to the benefit of mankind. Thank you for inviting me to this part of this important conference. Together, I believe that together we can bring about great achievements and meaningful breakthroughs for the benefit of humanity. Thank you very much and shalom from Israel.